Okay. Oh, did you happen to be born over there? So you're human. Tell me which mixture you are. I don't give a rat's ass.
Okay.
You're a human being sitting across the table from me. Now, continue. Sorry. Sorry. It's your podcast.
It's fine. I don't mind.
I don't mean to jump all in your face.
It's fine. I'm funny.
Okay.
And I've come to learn about what it was to be black in the 1960s, 70s from my guests, and it's helped me to understand my mother better. Because my mother didn't react like your father did. Black. You talked about
Your mother was Nigerian.
Nigerian. She came to the UK, lived in an all-white area. She didn't react like your father did, and so it skewed my perspective on race relations. But then from doing this podcast and meeting people like you, hearing some of those very specific stories, and I almost can't believe it. Now I have this huge amount of empathy for my mother because I've sat here with the guests. And one of the stories I heard you tell was about your father competing in athletics and how people would scream the N-word at him while he was running.
Oh, yeah. So this was, for me, one of the most insightful lessons that I got from all the stories from him. Yeah, so he was an athlete, actually world class track. That's its own story because he was kind of muscular, right? Certainly in his day. Not Charles Atlas muscular, but relative to other kids in his class. In high school, he was muscular. And they were in their gym class and you line up and getting ready for the next unit. Right? There was gymnastics and then there was like track and field. So they had the track unit. And the gym teacher pointed to my father on the line and said, we're about to do the running unit and...
Afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all well.
You see Cyril Tyson over there? There returns. He said, he has the kind of body that would not make a good runner. And he said to himself, no one is going to tell me what I can't do in this world. And he started running. And he became world class. And at one point, he had the 5th fastest time in the world in his special event. So that's an important lesson, career lesson. Why are there people running around telling you what you can't accomplish? In a free society? I can get it if we're not a free society. So that was lesson number 1 for me. But then, his best friend, also a runner, Johnny Johnson. There's a race. Johnny Johnson is running around on the last turn of the track. And there's a runner from the New York Athletic Club several paces behind him. The coach of that runner goes up the side of the track and screams to his runner as he points to Johnny Johnson ahead of him, catch that. Johnny Johnson overheard this. And all Johnny Johnson said to himself was...
No, this is a YouTube discussion of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Okay. So that comment from the coach could have done one of two things. It could have demotivated you because then you wallow in the racism of the world, or it could motivate you to succeed. Ever since I heard that story, every racist encounter I have ever had simply motivates me to succeed all the more. Period.
And I see that throughout your story as you go through college, university.
I really enjoy listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson. He has such an uncanny way of describing whatever it is he happens to be talking about. He has this ability to completely open up the topic in such a simple way that you can just fully understand what he's trying to say, even though it's something quite scientific.
I don't want to claim equal trauma to what earlier generations had experienced, but you can get, let's call it institutional racism, where you don't even
racism. I'm talking about people trying to put you off your passion, telling you it's not.
I'm calling that racism. What I'm saying is, they see that I'm athletic. I've been athletic most of my life, and they can't wrap their head around me being something other than an athlete that they watch on television. When I say, well, I actually like astrophysics, but you're so good at this other sport. No, I want to be in the physics club. No, we need you on the basketball team. And they think they're doing me a favor. They think they're saying nice things to me. But every one of those is a force operating against my ambitions. And so, in a way, just that my skin color in my life's arc was a path of most resistance compared to where I wanted to land. And by the way, I don't, we just spent a half hour talking about this, and I hardly ever talk about it. I don't talk about it because I don't, I don't need to. Maybe if it's a counseling session, but I'm perfectly fine. I'm a happy guy, happily married, got 2 kids, and I hardly ever talk about skin color because I want to make it irrelevant as quickly as I possibly can in every context I'm possibly in. So, if you're going to invite me to give a public talk in February, Black History Month, I will decline that invitation. If you only think of me as a black scientist, then I have failed as a scientist. Period. You want me to, and you know how I realized this? Okay? So I will tell you the moment after which I was a different person interacting with the public.
I should have something on my feet, but to be honest, when I get hot,
on the sun,
when the weather's warm, I prefer to have nothing on my feet. Keeps me cool.
Hears about this. So they want to
But
get a
you're
comment
right,
on it.
ultimately.
An explosion on the sun. So they called Columbia, the Department of Astronomy. And they're looking for some, it was lunchtime. They were all out to lunch. I'm a doctoral candidate. I'm there for my PhD. And so the department admin is going through the call. So I said, sure. And they said, hello. There's an explosion on the sun. Solar flare. Particles coming. You mean the Earth is fine? I just witnessed something I've never seen before in my life. You know what that was? It was the news interviewing a black person, me, who was not an entertainer or athlete, okay? Interviewing a black person for expertise that had nothing to do with being black. The interview didn't say at the end, well, how do black people feel about solar flares? Oh, this is just like dark differently. It was, will Earth be safe? Black person. I'd never seen that. Then I thought, well, this is my so I watched the next brought onto the news expertise. It was someone who's a member of Congress representing a community, and they want enterprise zones for the economics. There is someone who is worried about the poverty in the inner city. Never had an audience seen a black person as an expert. Oh, they would have attorneys, but it's talking about a court case about a black person. Would there ever been a black attorney to talk about a court case about a white person? No. And I said to myself, that is the answer. That's how we turn an entire world of people People just dumb and stupid, lazy, shiftless. That I do is shine my shoes and entertain me to sing and be the athlete on the field. If there's ever a force in a way, would they have other things to say, oh, more about this because Daddy has one again. So next time you see a homeless black person, they're not saying, oh, black people are just there. They have to confront the fact that they just saw a black person tell them that Earth was safe. So it's just your car. Somebody comes up your window and asks for money. Maybe the part of the forces that operate, that discriminate against one community of people versus another. So, ever since that moment, I have declined interviews that want me because I'm black. And even in this interview, I'm not entirely comfortable spending a half hour talking about it because it turns this interview into something about me being black, which then is someone hears me for the first time. Oh, let's get him. He has all these stories about being black. Let's get him to talk to this group about in this race conference. No. I will do an invitation.
So let's talk about what advice would you give me on how you pursue the thing that sets your heart on fire, your passion, whatever you want to call it, without falling into or conforming to the external pressure to become a doctor or lawyer. I'm thinking about people who are watching this that have a passion, but they don't consider it to be a job, as many people didn't consider moving out to be a job back then, and they're being forced by the external world, parents, expectations, social media, to go and do something else they don't want to do. What would you say to those people?
I can tell you this, that if you don't have, I didn't realize how unusual it was to be that passionate that young. Not until I got to college. Half the people my freshman year didn't yet know what they wanted to major in. And I said, I'm majoring in astrophysics. I said,
Hey, John.
Early in the catalog, alphabetically, of things you might major. No, I felt this and known this half my life. And so in college, I was sensitized to people who were still searching. Well, we have the benefit of longer life expectancy today than 50 years ago. I mention this only because if you don't know what to be, if you don't know what you want to do, then you grow up. But I don't want to have to blame you for not exposing yourself to what you can be when you grow up. If you're sitting home watching football and say, I don't know what I want to do with my life, why don't you do what my parents did? Visit a new thing every weekend. Go on a trip. Talk to experts in all manner of tasks. Visit a chef school. Visit a geology expedition. Just do things. And if you like it, you'll probably be better at that than anything else you choose to do. Because you will invest even your downtime doing it. And as the saying goes, pick something you would do for free and make that your career, and you'll never live a sad day in your life. So that's one variant on pick something that you love. And all the time when other people say, I need a vacation from this job, you're going to say, vacation? What's that? And people say that to me. Do you want a vacation? From what? From the astrophysics you do. But I like what I'm doing. If I'm on vacation, I love being on the beach. But if I'm on the beach, I'm thinking about the universe. It's not to get away from the universe, all right? Not that could literally happen anyway. So that's what I would say. You want to be independent-minded. Listen to people's comments. People have life experience. Don't ignore it. But what you want to do is fold it into your own sensibilities, provided you have sensibilities to begin with. Otherwise, between one person's suggestion and another.
In the cover of your book, it talks about the polarization that we're seeing in the world at the moment. What is, what are the things that you're really most concerned about when you think about the difference about human race, life here on Earth, and what's going on? What are the things that trouble you at a very deep level?
A lot of things. So, let me put some context. In science, if I put a conclusion, it's not if you look at both sides. No, that's not the question. Did you look at all sides? We have this binarity mind where we think, are you for me, or are you for us or against us? Is it black or white? Are you a boy or are you a girl? Up or is it down? This is intellectual lazy. Because practically everything that exists in this universe manifests on the spectrum. So here's that thought, and you're going to say, did you look at all? No, I was all sides. Did you realize that if this changes, that can change this, and did you figure out how sensitive it is to that? If I didn't, I'm not doing my job as a scientist. Okay? So, we live in a time especially fractured by the forces of social media. I say this only because if you post an opinion on anything in social media, it gets attacked. There'll be people who agree with it, fine. But the noise and the fireworks are when you get attacked. I don't think it used to be that way. I think there was a time when I would express an opinion and you say, oh, that's interesting. Here's my opinion. So why do you think that way? Here's why I think that. That's interesting. I never thought about it that way. Cool. You spend 15 minutes talking, comparing and contrasting opinions, then you go out for a beer at the pub. This is how I remembered it. Am I misremembering it? I don't think so. Could you be attacked? So what are the consequences? What do you actually ask by attacking someone with a different opinion? Oh, I know what it is. You want everyone to have exactly the same opinion you do. Well, that's not this country either. No. You know what's on our currency? On our currency, e pluribus unum. Okay? Out of the many, we have one. Not out of the one, we have one. It is the many. It is the plurality pluribus. It's Latin, okay? A plurality means people coexist who think differently about the world. And we celebrate that, or at least we ought to. Otherwise, we're all the same. We can make a country where everybody's the same, and that's called a dictatorship. Is that really, think through fully the consequences? No, let me get back to the violence. I was in the place of social media. You had a piece on this that went viral that got attacked, right? I mean, there was one in particular, I think, was attacking the news. I can't even remember it. It's never my intent to post a tweet that gets attacked. If it gets attacked, it's like, I didn't see that coming. I count myself as an educator. I'm on the right to educators. And my goal is to enlighten and educate, not to anger people. So I still maintain a forbidden Twitter file on my computer. These are tweets that, no, I'm not going to post. You know, it's true, objectively true. It would be too upsetting to people. Is there another way? So anytime that happens, you're like, oh my God, okay, let me see if I can tune that differently next time.
But if you know it's true and you believe it's important, you still might have post it because it might upset you.
In ways that are not productive. No, I will quote my thought. It's not good enough to be right. You also have to be effective. If you're not effective, go home. It doesn't matter if you are in the right. So if I post something that just creates more divisiveness, I need to find another way to achieve the same goal without the conflict. So no, I'm not just about putting the truth out there, and if it triggers landmines, so what? It's the truth. No, that's not being an educator.
there's a point here I really want to answer for my own. That's something I've been thinking a lot about. As we see this polarization in every facet of conversation and public discourse, I've started to think that maybe the antidote is the very few amongst us that have the guts to stand by the truth regardless of the arrows they take. And I'm seeing that a little bit with some big commentators. I shan't name names because that'll be a headline. But I'm thinking actually their bravery, I guess, and their courage to say the truth regardless of the fact they're going to get piled on because it doesn't fit the narrative is actually helping us. It's helping us almost it's helping.
It moves the needle.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see that. I'm just saying, I believe, however delusionally, that you can achieve the same goal without angering people. And part of the goal of that book is to offer ways to think about points of conflict in fresh ways that do not trigger people to dig their heels in and fight more ferociously to defend their opinions. Now, I want to put this in context. So I started out by describing an idea, and you can say, did you consider both sides? No, I considered all sides. People want to think we're in the most violent times. Okay, we look at the violence against the trans community. First, there was always violence against trans people. Nobody was talking about it. Because there was violence against other people, there was violence against black people, there was violence against women. There's a whole list of people who were more represented statistically in the world than trans people, where we went through periods of our social justice arc to try to rectify those problems. And so the fact that trans rights are on the table now is itself a measure of progress. Because we're not talking about gay marriage anymore. We're not talking under President Clinton, one of our more progressive liberal presidents. Do you know what the thing was? It was gays in the military. Don't ask, don't tell. That was considered a progressive stance in the 1990s under a liberal president. Don't ask, don't tell. Now in Qatar, they say we will welcome gay people, but don't exhibit the gayness in the stands. And everyone is jumping all over them for that regressive posture. It's exactly what we were 30 years ago. Don't ask, don't tell. I don't mind if you're gay, just don't kiss another man in front of me if you're a man. Otherwise, okay with it, all right? So what I'm saying is, look at the other things that preceded it, and you can declare progress having led up to it. That's my point. Not that it's still, you still have to worry about it, and it still needs solutions. And you still have to somehow change people's sense of what equality is, and equal access and opportunity and equity and inclusion. That all still needs to happen. But that is not happening now, or less so with black people. So there are measures of progress that are kind of perverse, but real. And you know what my father used to say? He said, I'll know we've achieved equality when a black person can be indicted for embezzlement of funds. When a black person can be sent to jail for embezzling $500 million, I know we've made it. Okay? Okay? Like I said, it's a perverse measure, but it's another way to think about the progress that has actually happened in this world. The safest times there ever was in the history of civilization. I don't think we should lose sight of that. People are afraid to say it, I think, because the worry, and it's a legitimate worry, that you might just get complacent and sit back and say, see, everything is fine. It requires no more work and no more effort. I'm saying maybe we should take violence that persists today. We should look at the successes and say, well, what did we do right? Let's do more of that. And there's not much of people saying, look how far we've come. Let's list how we achieved this.
Why don't people do that? I saw a poll on Twitter 2 days ago, and the question was, it was essentially, do you feel optimistic about the future? I clicked yes, and I was in the tiny minority, and roughly 70% of people, I think it was slightly more, felt pessimistic about the future. Either were worried and fearful about the future.
Right, and here's another statistic, which is in the spirit of that, but it's a little more thorough. It was a Gallup poll, I forgot which one, it might have been a different one, but one of the official polling agencies for the past 30 years have asked people each year in the United States, are things more dangerous for you just in your community and in your this year than last year? 27 of those years, people said it's more dangerous this year than last year. I don't feel as safe as I did last year. Okay? Now, let's plot the crime rate over the past 30 years. It has been a precipitous drop. It's a drop. There's some bumps in there, but basically it has dropped for 30 years. Since basically the 1980s, 90s up until today. So there's some delusional force operating on people's understanding of the world in which they live. And then people wanted to blame it, I think in part correctly, on local news. What's the first thing you see? You put on, not the local news. There's a crime committed, and now we have video. So, we didn't used to have surveillance video. Now you see the person beating up on the old person or the person breaking into the jewelry. Now you see it. You say, oh my gosh. Clutch your lug. And remove them as far as possible. What is the scientific to not fool yourself into thinking something is true that is not, or that something is not true that is. So that poll would have told me, I'm going to look at the actual data. And I'm going to look at and I'm going to react to the actual data, not to my feelings about an objective truth. Nothing wrong with feelings. It's the source of the greatest art in the world, and it's our emotions, how we feel. I'm going to on your feelings, and there's an objective truth that informs those feelings. That's the path you should take. Otherwise, we're a house of cards. They could collapse at any moment because somebody feels like you're going to harm them, or they feel like it's dangerous, or they feel like excuse me? I love human feelings, but don't let it interfere with objective truths. Don't let it interfere with legislation, laws that would have to affect us all.
Quick one from our longest standing sponsor, Cure. I can't tell you over the last, really it's been about 2.5 years. It was really post-pandemic, how much my health has become such a huge priority in my life. Huel has been probably the most important partner in my health journey, because I've been in the boardrooms, I've been to their offices. Decisions on things that is and the exercise, breathing, and most importantly, nutrition. I get to read these out. I really believe every we've been resistant. We're lucky enough to have Intel on this podcast, and Intel Evo is essentially their badge of excellence that determines whether a laptop is high spec or not. So it's going to save you a load of time researching and comparing models. Because if you see the Intel Evo badge, you know Intel own strict requirements for laptops that prioritize only productivity. One of the requirements for Intel Evo is the real-world and fast rush. Evo laptops are lasting fast, which takes most of the time. You'll get at least 4 hours worth of time under 5 minutes if you're plugged in. And a battery life designed to last at least 9 or more hours, even if you're like me and have multiple tabs open. The laptop is also really responsive. With the Intel Evo platform, it wakes up in less than seconds and comes with built into the laptop, so it's ready to go. As someone who spends a lot of my time between podcasts, meetings, events, etc., being able to rely on a laptop going at the pace I do is difficult. Your platform, the performance and the battery life you need to do just that. Head to intel.co.uk Evo to find out more about the Intel Evo platform.
So, I'm being asked this a lot recently. What is your advice when it comes to the question, what is the best way right now to make things online? Especially this is being asked by people who have the ability to control their lives, things like how much money they make, how much time they've got. People are really to create a different lifestyle for themselves. Quite often it's geographical freedom, so they can live anywhere. And now
your documentary, Cosmos, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Cosmos. I think might be an English.
You're a Brit. I don't know or care how you pronounce anything.
It's all English. So
you can say
Cosmos.
You will never find an American correcting British pronunciation.
Well, it happens sometimes.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So objective truth and reality and feelings. One of the things I learned from that documentary, which was honestly, I remember the day I found it. I shouldn't say this, but I didn't have a lot of money, so I found it on some dodgy, pirated website, and I watched. I think it was 8 episodes. The previous one with Carl Sagan. It just fascinated me, and it has. I actually would cite that as I started my fascination with the universe, and one of the really profound things I took from it, when we're talking about objective truth and feelings, is there's a scene in the documentary where you kind of zoom out, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going and going. It made me feel so insignificant. I realised that I am objectively irrelevant, and that was a wonderful feeling. Because with that, it strips away the burden
ego.
of your own self-importance and ego. Do we matter?
So the cosmic perspective is each path. I should say, the ego is equal with the cosmic. The cosmic perspective shows you how small we are in size, in time, in space. And if you go in with a high ego, you might resist that. You might say, no, I'm important. But I think of it differently. We know one of the greatest gifts of modern astrophysics to civilization, dare I call it a gift, is the knowledge that the atoms of your body are of the universe itself. But especially manufacture them and later on death explode, scattering that across gas clouds, so that there is a generation of stars, and on at least one of those planets, life. So, we are not just figuratively, we are literally sky. Yes, we're small in that space. Alive in this universe, but there's another one. The universe is alive within you. You have kinship with the cosmos. That feeling, to me, is greater than any ego you could have possibly walked into the room with. First, that feeling borders on. We have trained us to equate being special with being different. You're special. You do something, think in some way that no one else does. So I'm special. Well, let me turn that on its head and say, maybe we're special, not because of this, but because we're the same. All humans are starting. All humans share a chemistry with all biology, with all other life on Earth. There's one Genesis on this Earth. We have DNA in common with a banana. You can ask, well, where are the arms and legs? No, DNA goes deeper than that. DNA controls chemistry. It controls metabolism. It controls all kinds of things that are prescribed in the DNA, and that's where we have commonality with other life forms on Earth. So why not look around and say, I'm not special because I'm different. I'm special because I'm the same as you, as others, as the tree, as the brook, as the animals, the woodland creatures. And we can all sit here and look up at the night sky and say, yes, we have kinship with the cosmos. I feel large because of it. Not small.
Are you a busy dad who behind the smile is actually struggling? You feel alone in the challenges you face as a man, as a husband, and as a father. Maybe you've lost your sense of purpose and aliveness. After all of your responsibilities, you don't have any time left for what really matters to you. Maybe you find yourself stuck in this unending cycle of tension and arguments with your wife, and your marriage lacks the connection and intimacy that you desire. You want to be a great dad, but you mostly find yourself feeling frustrated.
You mentioned the pursuit of happiness earlier when you were talking about one of the central sort of like doctrines of the American dream, that pursuit of happiness. And in what you just said about the universe, I was pondering where meaning is derived from. So I'll kind of ask the question at the same time. This happiness and meaning, where does that come from in your perspective?
What I have found is there's an urge people have to search for meaning. Is it under this rock, metaphorically, right? Is it under a rock? I'm going to search under. Is there meaning? Is it behind a tree? Is if I join this group, will I find meaning with them? And I think, okay, go ahead. But what you do is relegating meaning in your life to a search. Suppose you don't find meaning. That'd be a force of disappointment in your life. You're setting yourself up to be disappointed if you don't find meaning. So I have another idea. I use this for myself. It may or may not work for others. I recognized long ago that in a free society where I'm not enslaved and I'm not, an indentured servant, and I have some freedom of choice, that I have the power to manufacture meaning in my life. I can make decisions about my own life that create the meaning. For me, a meaningful life is learning something new tomorrow that I didn't know yesterday. Otherwise, it's a wasted day. You know the prisoner who puts X's in the boxes on the wall for the day they get out? I have that in my head, and the day that I get out is the day I die. All right? And what these boxes remind you of is every day you're alive, you're one day closer to death. So there's one fewer days in there to accomplish something that you might have wanted to accomplish. So, I want to keep learning about our world, about each other, about things I don't otherwise know about. And there are people who only read things that they agree with, or that they already know about, or that they're feeding some urge to be, to be validated. I have books on my shelf, at my bedside. Every book is a subject that I either know nothing about or I completely disagree with going into the book. So maybe it'll change my mind. learn new ideas. Okay, I once presented that list to the New York Times when they said, because my book was doing well at one point, and they try to get authors to talk about other books to keep the book wheel turning, because fewer people are reading today. So what books are you reading? So on your shelves, I listed the books. One of them was a book in his 30th printing or something. It was originally written back in the early 60s, I think, maybe even the 50s. A book by Barry Goldwater called The Conscience of a Conservative. And so I'm reading this, and people wrote to me after they saw this list. They said, I didn't know you're a closet conservative. I didn't know you were really a Republican. Did you vote for Trump? And all of a sudden, people were presuming that if I'm reading a book on something, that book must be what my whole life is about, rather than it's a portal to another place of how people think and what people do. So that shocked me, actually, because that tells me that most people must have just books that continue to feed their own interests. And that is the best way to not grow in this world. So one of my measures of meaning is how much more do I know about the world tomorrow than I did yesterday? Because almost any path you take will make you wiser as a person. So I value wisdom. That gives meaning to my life. A new perspective. It's not just knowledge. No. What is the arc? There's data. Data can become information. Information on further study becomes knowledge. And after enough time, when you see how the knowledge plugs in and applies, it can become wisdom. Wisdom is the distilled essence of all the details. The wisest statements ever spoken to you generally have no detail in them at all, do they? I've heard it said this way: wisdom is what's left over after you've forgotten all the details. It's the distilled essence of it all. So I want to be wiser on the porch, on my rocking chair. I don't want to be the old curmudgeon. In my day, we did it best. No, I don't want to be that guy. No. So that's one source of meaning. Another, and it's directly traceable to my parents, but I'd like to also think it's traceable to common sense, is spend a little bit of your life lessening the suffering of others. I don't mean redirect your life. Some people do. They work in soup kitchens and start not-for-profits to serve. Yes, I'm not that person. No, because the universe is what calls me. But in my day, in a week, do something that lessens the suffering of someone else, however trifling that gesture is. And that's an infusion of good. Yeah, I'm value judging it. I'm saying, yes, it's a good thing to lessen the suffering of others. I'm declaring that. I try not to ever put opinions out there, but it's my opinion that if you lessen the suffering of others, you make a better world. And don't we all want to live in a better world?
If you're currently paying for a subscription to a doorbell camera, stop now. This revolutionary, affordable subscription.
If your happiness were a recipe, right, consisting of various ingredients that needed to be present in certain quantities for you to be a happy person, and under the assumption that no one is perfectly happy under any kind of vague sense of the word, what is missing from your list of ingredients at the moment? Or what could you have more of that?
I don't think of life that way.
Okay, how do you think of life? Why is that wrong, that question?
I didn't say it was wrong. I don't value judge. Okay? It's not what's right or wrong. It's I don't live life that way because it means you carry with you the emotions. I could be happier if I were doing this, and how come I'm not? And all of a sudden, well, then I must be miserable if I'm not as happy as I could be. No, I don't measure day to day, am I happy or not? It's not the measure. yes, it's in there, but that's not the metric. The metric is, am I successful at what I'm doing? Am I? No, it's not even that. It's, am I as good at this as I can be? If you're not going to try to improve, go home. Find something else. So, I remember in my first interview on national television, a new planet had just been discovered around another star, an exoplanet. It was banner headline. We now have 5,000 in the catalog, but back then, 1995, it was a banner headline, another planet. And we kind of always knew they'd be out there. We just didn't have the tools to figure it out. NBC News sent an action cam up to the planetarium. I was freshly appointed as director. They didn't know me as a person, but I carried title. And so the chyron on the TV image gets to say, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Director, Hayden Planetarium. Okay. They came up and interviewed me. Tell us about this new planet. How was it discovered? Right. So I gave my best professorial reply. Best. Oh my gosh. There's a Doppler shift that the orbiting planet influences the position of the star in space. It's not just the star sits there fixed in the universe and planets orbit it. They both orbit their common center of gravity. And so the star, you can't see the planet, it's too dim, but you look at the star, and the star is jiggling back and forth, and I motion that with my body. And I said, and you measure this movement back and forth with the Doppler shift. You calculate it, and you can infer the existence of this planet. And bada bing, it's a planet. And I went on for like probably 4 times that length with my and then I go home, it's national news. I get to call everybody. Hey, everybody, my friends in California, I'm going to be on TV, check it out. And so when the segment aired, all they showed was me jiggling my hips like this and saying, it's a planet. And I said, oh, they don't want my professor reply. They want a reply that fits in their medium, a soundbite medium. So let me practice that. So I went home and stared in the mirror and had people just shout out objects, names, places, people, things, and I assembled sound bites for each one of them. It's like 3 sentences. It's got to be informative, makes you smile a little bit, and the information has to be tasty so that you want to tell someone else. That's a sound bite, okay? We can do that now. Mention anything in the universe. Just not a question, just a word, just anything. Mars. Ooh. Do you know Mars is red because it's rust? It's a rusted planet. And rust has the color of red. The whole planet, because there's a lot of iron on Mars. And red is the color of blood. Hence Mars, the god of war. It might have life here, we're still looking. Oh, soundbite.
Venus.
Okay. Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. And Venus, as an object in the night sky, is stupefyingly brilliant. Until you learn it has a runaway greenhouse effect and it's 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 500 degrees Celsius on its surface. It would vaporize you. So much for...
Hey folks. So we've made some good progress. There's the pipe so far. We managed to get a good bend with a perfect drill. It is a big pipe. It measures the bowl. It measures 3 inches, the height of the bowl, and it's 1.5 inches across. And it is, how would you say this? Seven-eighths of an inch is the bowl diameter. I've made it a bit wider. It is a big old pipe. I think the shape is pretty good. That's swan neck. So now I've got to do the hand sanding, and I've got to decide if I'm going to rusticate this at all. Got to decide on a finish. Stem's looking good as well. It's got a nice taper. A lot of work, the stems, I have to say. Doing the hand cut stems, there's a lot of effort. I haven't put any adornments on it. I want it to be classic. It's the size of the pipe and the shape which is the feature of the pipe. It really shouldn't need anything else. I went for a darker stem. It is a brindled ebonite. It's a black green, but it's a very dark green. I wanted it to be classic. I didn't want to do black. It's just too boring. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be glitzy. So it's a dark green and black. As close to classic as possible, but still having a little bit of an element which lifts it a little bit visually. And it's just me. That's just how I am. I hardly ever do black stems. Hardly ever. Occasionally, but not often. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there for now, and I will catch you guys on the next occasion. Thank you very much for staying with me. It really just needs finishing. The shaping and everything is pretty much bang on. I usually have to do a little bit by hand, but it's actually worked very well on the shaping wheel. And I need to thank Mike again, Bry Blues, who gave me that wheel, the J. Allen wheel. This is a wheel from Jeff Graysick, his design. I don't use it very often. I especially don't use it very often because they're a bugger to set up the sandpaper. But I use it when I want to get into tight spaces. That's all I use it for. So thank you, Mike, for that. It's a very useful bit of kit. But yeah, this is a proper magnum size, 3 inches high, the bowl. And yeah, it's beautiful, holds very well. It's not too big. It's just a magnum. It's just how it should be. Hey Bob, how you doing? Just done the shaping on a Magnum Swan neck or LC, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the difference if there is one between an LC and a Swan neck. If you guys, any of you guys know, then please enlighten me. But it's the same kind of idea anyway. Well, we've been on for a long time, Bob. We've been on for 1 3/4 hours. So you're late to the game. It's got very, very, very fine grain, but it also has other grain behind it, and you still got your ales troubling you. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't mean ales as in ALE. I mean AIL. Still from the food poisoning. This is for somebody who likes to just sit back and enjoy a handheld pipe whilst reading a book or just chilling in the armchair of an evening. This would be the ideal pipe. But I tell you what, by the time I finish with the stem, you could probably clench this as well, resting on your chin or on your chest. You should be able, by the time that bend is in and the button's done, hopefully it will be clenchable. It's not the heaviest block in the world. It's well cured. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this comes out. I just can't decide at this stage if I'm going to stay in it, if I'm going to rusticate it or not. I think what I'm going to have to do is sand it as if I'm not rusticating it. Give it a quick stain and buff without leaving it overnight, just to see what it's going to look like. And if I want to do it smooth, then I'll do it again and leave it overnight. No worries, Bob. Wish you a speedy recovery anyway. Alright guys, I'm going to go. Thanks very much. Catch you on the next one.